Buddhist stance. Walking out with the good for you.
Right in the door.
And we're gonna get all the leaves. Feel too formal standing up, so. Good evening, everybody. Before we get started for real on the good fun stuff, well, this is kind of fun stuff. How many people were here yesterday? I know you were. Okay, so you've already heard me say this, so I'll try to say it in a slightly different way. But obviously, yesterday was pretty emotional in our Sunday teaching. Geshe-la was talking about a lot about Tibet and some of the things that the Tibetans have kind of always thinking about, and so yeah, it was yeah. But that's okay, because this time of year is what we call the annual appeal, and basically a lot of how we keep the center going, a lot of the finances that come in, like a majority of them are kind of set in motion during this time. So people are setting up one-time gifts or ongoing giving, and we do it throughout the year, but a lot of it is kind of concentrated at this time. So you get to hear all kinds of special things, like people invited up here to say why they give. So I think part of the experience is just kind of like sharing stories. And the way I started off when I started thinking about this is like, why do I give? Well, really the reason to give is because if I'm ever going to be truly of benefit to anybody else, I have to develop generosity first. This is a quality that is very important for us to develop, as we'll hear in all of these DB classes. So it's no surprise, and I'm obviously not the one who made this up, to say that for me, it's important to give because I need to practice. I need to practice to get to that point of real generosity, of really having this like spontaneous and heartfelt wish. And I'm not there yet. As I shared yesterday, a lot of my giving is like attachment with a little bit of generosity mixed in there, I'd say. Oh, that thing over there looks like it could need some help, and I have a result in my mind that's going to be pleasant to me, so I'll help with that. But ultimately, one reason when I do give, I love to give at Kadampa Center, is because of the experience that I have with everybody here who's also trying to kind of think about things in the same way that I'm trying to think about things, to really develop that kind of heartfelt wish to benefit others, you know, kind of lowering the attachment and developing the generosity as we do this. And the other reason when I give to Kadampa Center is because just like what an amazing place this is, because the teachings exist here, because of the dedication of everyone who supports this place and our teachers, and just the amazing opportunities that we have. And they're so rare to hear teachings in English, to have visiting teachers come from the Western perspective, to be able to meditate, to purify, to create merit, all of these things. So I just think that it's been such a beneficial place for me, and I want this place to continue to exist to benefit others. So how to do that is, so like I said, the majority of our budget of our $250,000 that we're need to bring in throughout the year, a lot of it gets accounted for now. And I think what I said yesterday is, you know, one-time gifts and monthly giving, but it turns out I think there's other options too. We're pretty flexible, like quarterly giving's an option, like any way that you want to set it up is pretty much an option. But the reason I love monthly giving is because I can't forget. Been around a long time when I used to have to remember to like bring a checkbook, write a check, put it in the thing, and then I'd get here and I'd get distracted, and then I'd feel bad. So I can kind of set it and forget it. Although I also have the intention to start kind of, if I get a monthly thank you from Kadampa Center, to rejoice, dedicate the merit, so I can kind of keep that intention growing and strong. So when I think about that monthly giving, I kind of think about, what's a couple therapy sessions or like a gym membership or something like that. I do kind of think about it more as a, what does it take to keep the doors open? But I also know that from being involved at the level I'm at, that the monthly giving is less than half of that 200,000 that is the annual appeal chunk of it. So we have we don't have endowments or anything, but we have some very generous one-time givers. So that's great. And I think, for me, I also want to have an opportunity to do one-time gifts. My husband and I kind of work together on this, and we have what I've called our like our personal tithing. So we just kind of budget, and this is just sharing. It's not saying this is how people should do it. This is just kind of everybody's getting up here talking about how they do things. So we set money aside on a monthly basis so that we can have like a bigger pot of a bigger opportunity. So what does he call it? Impact. Savings for impact. So if something comes up with our family member or, a nonprofit that we're attached to, or Kadampa Center is having an annual campaign or something like that. And then at the end of the year, we kind of do a little reconciling and figure out, like, if we have more to give, where can we do it? One-time giving, end-of-year giving is pretty common for a lot of nonprofits and things like that. So then my actual favorite part is where this other funds comes in. When we have visiting teachers, Dharma class, memorials, pujas, general dana, especially, when we have visiting teachers, and you guys, I'm sure, have all come in and seen like all the dedications and everything there. It's just such a good opportunity to really, for me, like I said, I could do it throughout these other opportunities, but for me, that's, when you're asked to write a dedication, when you really sit and think about why you're doing this and how you're giving, and it can come up throughout the year, and you can be making connections to teachers or giving on a holy day, or for a Tara practice, things like that. I think those are just really special opportunities that come up throughout the year, and really good for our minds to make that kind of connection, or that's been my experience. So thank you, especially to those who had to listen to this twice. That's my part, is sharing that.
My part twice. So thank you, Erin. So yes, I've been soliciting people who I feel like could carry a good message, and I really like Erin's message. The annual appeal is 200,000, and the other funds are 50,000. And the piece I'd like to say is, you guys may be brand new here. You might have been here a long time. Somebody just handed me a check when they walked in the door, so it's kind of exciting. Another person gave me a pledge while I was here. One gave me a promise of a pledge. So it's pretty fun this time of year. But to look at one, like Erin said, you can take this any way you want it. If you did want to give, you can parse out your money so that it works for you. Like if you only wanted to give a little bit per month, but you wanted to give more for visiting teachers, or that big one-time gift at the end to help out when the budget's having a tough time, we are encouraging you to talk with yourself or your partner or anybody in your family and think, how could I, if I did want to give, how could I spread it out? Because all the pots, you kind of vote with your dollar. So Dharma classes, every dollar you drop in the box, it goes into the Dharma class. It's not specified literally for that. It's just, it's a way to consider that you're giving towards what you love and what you like about it. And you are making the connection spiritually. So especially to visiting teachers and pujas, you're making that connection to those events. So if Venerable George is here and you really are moved by it, you are making a connection with Venerable George. I think I can safely say that. We don't exactly know how karma plays out, but that's the idea behind it. This is a fun board it's changed a little bit since yesterday. So yeah, thank you. So this is our challenge that the IGC, the Inspiring Generosity Committee, is presenting to everyone. We used to have things like those who increase their giving get included in this challenge, and those who are new get included. We thought we'd lump them all together. And we had 4 people that stepped up. One gave $5,000 to encourage 3 others to give. So we don't have anybody at this level except the first 5. Someone gave $3,000 to encourage 4 others. And someone gave $1,000 to encourage 5 others. And if 5 others give, he will give another $1,000. So today we got up to the 4. And then it just occurred to a couple of us that The 2 people who just said they would do something equals 600. So if we actually get another 400, we'll lump that together and call that the last 1,000, and then we'll get our other 1,000. And this is Gary Mickey. He's given me permission. He said, empty my wallet. So he wants me to try to do that. The 300, everybody's given at that level, so that's really exciting. You can still continue to do that. Maybe we can get more 300s that go up to that level. So that's the piece. There's a couple gifts that are giving away. If you join this challenge, you'll be entered to win an Ocracoke flight by David Strevel and his wife with a $150 gift certificate. He'll fly you there, spend the day. If you enter in any pledge at any form at anything, you get the $25 to the Himalayan. I was sporting something from them yesterday.
You get a chance to win.
Yeah, you get entered to win. Yes, thank you. $25 gift certificate to the Himalayan Tibetan shop. And by this, if you pledge by this Friday, then you can win a chance to win 2 tickets to Frida Kahlo. So everybody who's entered, just a pledge. It doesn't mean you have to give yet. So I'm looking for pledges right now so I can report all the stats. And we are at, what did we just get to? We actually got to 113. We were at 105 yesterday. So all the giving in my email box and everything. So up to 113, and we're trying to get to 200,000. So that's the spiel. And now you can talk about death and dying.
Well, I can tie it into death and dying, and that is, the urgency, but also Jeffrey Hopkins, who translated a lot of the texts into English, said that, you know, in thinking about his next life, if he wants to be able to find the Dharma text, then he needs to translate them in this life so that he can find them in the next life. Same thing for us. If we want to be able to find these teachings in our next life, we need to be able to preserve them in this life so that they can carry on. And we'll find them then. So that's something that's always moved me, because I found it was kind of like a miracle that I did find them in this life. Okay, so my name is Steep. That's a nickname, S-T-E-E-P, or Stephanie. You can call me that, either one. Can you all hear me? Or see, you all can hear me, but this is being recorded for people who are watching at home. And so is this thing, can you really hear it through here? Okay, good. And that's why we pass the microphones. It's not that we can't hear you all. It's really for the folks who are going to watch this at home or watch it later. Anybody here for the very first time? Welcome, welcome. So this is Discovering Buddhism class, and it has, I don't know how many different modules, 11 or 12. And this is the 5th, I think. Are we on number 5? We are on 6? 6, okay. Well, we're on the death and dying module, which is not the end. And that's the whole point of this module. And I guess we're on the second to last class. So just join us, and if you have questions at the end, feel free to ask anybody, and we'll do our best to help you. So the way we always start in Buddhism is with our intention, understanding that the kind of the nature of cause and effect and the power of our mind. We want to kind of direct our mind to the highest possible goal that we can. So I always think it's important to start with yourself, because we often, at least I have often, excluded myself. I was like, oh no, Geshe-la told me, when you say the 4 immeasurables, may all beings have happiness, you're supposed to be including yourself in that prayer. It's not some other beings that you're separate from. So in our intention, setting our intention for the class, start with, what brought you here? What are you interested in? Learning more, understanding, having less fear of dying. What is it that brought you here? And then a deeper understanding that as you accomplish good goals, Dharma goals, it will affect not only your mind, but the mind of those around you. So you can even see on a very, mundane examples of how people who have a negative attitude, like at the post office, there were this woman who was in a really bad mood who worked there. Nobody wanted to stand in her line. So, it's so obvious that the calmer and the more compassionate and wise your mind is, the more people are going to want to line up there. So they go hand in hand. As you achieve your goals, you will naturally be helping others. The point of all this is that as we set our intention, we're trying to amp it up to the biggest possible wish, that as we move towards enlightenment, as we become enlightened, we will also be able to help all other beings. So we make the wish that it's just like if we were incarcerated, it wouldn't take much for us to generate the wish to get out. So helping ourselves understand that we are in fact incarcerated in this cyclic existence. Even though it's beautiful at times and wonderful and our life is precious, it is still this kind of cyclic incarceration. And that would help us, as is in the same way as if we were physically incarcerated in a prison, generate this wish to get out. And not only that, but as we get out, we would be able to open the door for all the others who are all similarly incarcerated. And certainly studying and thinking and talking about death and overcoming our fears and being able to use it as a tool will help in this process. And we're going to, as you've set your intention, then we're going to start with the 9-round breathing meditation that we did last week. So I'll walk you through it the first time, and then you can do it in 3 rounds on your own. So we're going to start by inhaling through the left nostril. So you close your right nostril, and as you breathe in, visualize you're breathing in pure, clean, crystal energy. And then you move your finger to your right nostril and exhale. And so the first round, you're going to be imagining that you're exhaling in the form of thick black smoke all the negativities associated with grasping, with clinging. So you'll do that 3 times, and then you'll switch. Then you'll inhale through the right nostril, pure, clean, crystal energy. And then you exhale through the right nostril and imagine thick black smoke exhaling all the negativities of anger. This life and all lives. You're just letting it all out. So you do that 3 times. And then the last one, both nostrils, inhaling pure, clean, crystal energy, exhaling all the negativities associated with ignorance. So then you'll do 3 of each. So 3 breathing in the left and out the right. Then you'll switch it to the right, breathing out the left, and then 3 with both nostrils. So I don't want to get in your way and keep talking you through it. So we'll start, and then after you finish that, just maintain your meditation by focusing all of your energy on just your breath for about 5 minutes. And then I'll ring this little bell. Any questions? Okay, so just begin at your own pace. Try to bring all your awareness to the energy of your mind. See if you can feel the energy of your mind. As thoughts arise and you bring awareness to them, will they settle down like a wave? And then there's a pause before the next one starts to rise up. Just like you're breathing, there's a pause at the end of the exhalation before you inhale again. If you're able to see when the thoughts arise and have them settle back down, the point is to kind of create as much space between those thoughts. Just kind of rest in that nature of your mind. And this practice of bringing focus to our mind increases our single-pointed concentration. Thoughts don't just stop thinking, but if you're able to bring all this one single-pointed focus to a topic that you're meditating on, to an analytical meditation, then you're joining these two types of meditation into one. So that's why we always practice with a focus meditation. So now, as you stay in that calm place, I'm going to read through the 9-point meditation on death awareness that we were reviewing last week. So this is a way to this is a traditional way in Tibetan Buddhism of meditating on our death and how to use it. And so it's organized into 3 roots, 9 reasons, and 3 decisions. The first root is the contemplation that death is definite. The 3 reasons there are because death will definitely come and therefore cannot be avoided. It's easy for us to just forget that in our daily life. But can we think of anyone that death will not come for? The second reason is because our lifespan cannot be extended and diminishes unceasingly. That second by second, our lifespan is not increasing. And the third reason that death is definite is that even when we are alive, there is little time to practice. So then the conclusion is, I must practice. The second root, contemplation that the time of death is indefinite. The first reason is because our lifespan in this world is indefinite. We don't come into this world knowing when we're going to leave. The second reason is because the causes of death are many and the causes of life are few. Think about all the different ways that people exit this world. I think there was even a kind of a comedy based on that. There's just so many different causes of death. The third reason is because the time of death is uncertain due to the fragility of the body. So the conclusion is I must practice now. Because the time of death is indefinite, I must practice now. And the third root is that contemplation at the time of death, nothing helps except practice. And the first reason is because at the time of death, our friends are of no help. Meaning they cannot reverse what's happening. They can remind us of important things to focus our mind on, but they cannot stop what's happening. The second reason is because at the time of death, our wealth is of no help. And the third reason is because at the time of death, our body is of no health. So all the resources we have accumulated in this life, our friends, our wealth, no matter what we've done to build up our body, none of that is going to help at the time of death. So the conclusion is I will practice non-clinging to any of the wonderful things of this life. So I'm going to read this one paragraph in this book that we've been using by the Dalai Lama. Not only must you die in the end, but you do not know when the end will come. If you did, you could put off preparing for the future. Even if you show signs of living to a ripe old age, you cannot say with 100% certainty that today you will not die. So this death awareness meditation is to help you not procrastinate, but to help you make preparations so that your mind is ready, so that you have few regrets. If you develop an appreciation for the uncertainty and imminence of death, your sense of the importance of using your time wisely will get stronger and stronger. It not only serves as preparation, but it dramatically affects your mental perspective. So it's been a couple weeks since we were sitting here. Anything happened or left? We had the homework was to use everything around you during the holidays, right? As a death awareness, as a practice. Anything that particularly came up or you'd like to share, or any questions that have come up? Because we have this class and then one more before the test. I'm just kidding. Usually I do give a test, but this time I haven't been here long enough. It's been such a kind of a different class. But anything that came up that you were able to use? Okay, I'll just slide on that one. But that was the homework. We'll come back to that. What I want to do today, we're not going to start with it right off the bat, but we're gonna do the death dissolution meditation. Have any of you read about that or heard about this practice? Or it's in the book that I've been recommending to use for this, because this book is jam-packed with the death awareness, with all kinds of meditations on this topic. And one of the ones that I've found the most helpful is the death dissolution meditation. So I memorized it. I try to do it at least several times a week, often do it as I'm falling asleep. And I remember talking to this teacher who had come to the Kadampa Center about that meditation. And I said, so I'm assuming that this meditation I'm doing is to help me overcome fear. And he said, no, the point is to become familiar. The point is to become absolutely familiar with these stages so that when you're in them, they're not disturbing your mind. And the whole point of, the Tibetan Book of Living and Dying, and the whole focus on dying, which is what drew me to this practice, is because in Buddhism, death is considered this incredible opportunity to launch yourself in the direction you want to go. So from this much bigger perspective of lifetime after lifetime after lifetime, what happens to the mind at the moment of death is this incredible opportunity to use. It can also be, and I guess if you took the karma class right before this, you know a lot about throwing karma and about different cycles of where you could go, different realms, so you understand the importance of the mind at the time of death. I don't want to get too far down that rabbit hole in case you were in that class. But suffice to say that there's the gross mind, the subtle mind, and then the very subtle mind. And what's happening through all these death dissolution states, which we'll get to, is that those other states are dissolving, and so the very subtle mind, which we hardly ever have access to, is dawning. And if we are familiar with this death dissolution state, then we won't get thrown by the appearances that are coming up before us as our body and mind dissolve, and we'll be able to use that moment to rest in that state of mind, that very subtle state of mind. So this is why when we were doing the meditation, I was talking about it takes time. I mean, sometimes my mind is just a choppy ocean. There's no way I'm going to rest between any of those thoughts. But if I can practice and follow my breath, I can start to see the nature of the mind, this kind of ocean-like quality of the mind. I can start to see when a thought arises, and I can gently let it back down and rest in that moment. I think that's just like the closest I can get right now to understanding the nature of mind. It's still helping me get to that point. So at the moment of death, all these other states are dissolving. We have the opportunity to use this clear light nature of the mind. And that's described incredibly well in this book. So we will go through the death dissolution states, and you'll see what I'm talking about. It's you can find it in this book. You can start to practice it. You can memorize those kind of a shortcut of those stages, and then practice that on your own. I find it actually very calming. That's the whole point, again, is to become familiar with those states and to be able to use them. Yeah. Were you going to ask something? No, okay. You got that book? Okay. So yeah, and it's based on this poem written by the Panchen Lama, but then the Dalai Lama, has comments throughout it, and the death dissolution states are written in here, so you can practice them. But I think that's, to me, one of the most powerful things of this practice is it's not this obsession with death or this fear of death. It's that is this opportunity to use it. So when we talk about the Bardo states, the Bardo just means kind of in between, right? So it's the in between lives. But I remember reading that so many things have a Bardo state. Even when we're alive, there are in-between states of when you're falling asleep, moving from this state of consciousness to a sleep state of consciousness. There's also the dissolution when you're starting to fall asleep. We're not aware as much, but those same states to some degree are happening as you fall asleep. We're not aware what's happening to our mind all through the night, but it doesn't mean that our mind has stopped. There's just different states of awareness, and different opportunities within it. So let's practice this. We'll go through it, so it might generate some questions, because once will not be enough. So check your posture. Make sure you're in a comfortable position. If you want to sit in the chair, if you're sitting in a chair, just make sure your feet are flat on the floor. Sometimes at home, if you're sitting in a chair to meditate, you could get a little cushion right under your hips so that your back, it kind of forces your back into a more aligned posture, because that's the most important thing in meditation, is that your spine is as straight as possible. So sitting on a cushion, having your knees lower than your hips, will only help get your spine as straight as possible. And then, ideally, you have your eyes half open, so that, I think Robert Thurman was talking about this on this tape I was watching. He says, so it kind of, it helps train the mind to be able to pull away from the world. You're not staring at something, but you're not completely shut down and away from it either. So it's not this duality of open eyes, closed eyes. Your eyes are just almost closed. There's a little bit of light coming in, but you're not focusing on the external. Tuck your chin down a little bit so that the top of your head, the crown of your head, is the highest point. Put your tongue at the back of your teeth, kind of relaxing your jaw. And so what happens in the death dissolution process is the different elements of our body are dissolving. So like the earth, you'll hear me describing different elements: the earth element, the water element, and these different appearances and sensations that you will experience. And so I'm going to read through it as though this is occurring to you right now. So you can imagine that you're fortunate enough to have you're not having a very fast death. You have it slow enough so that you can actually do this, in other words, if that makes sense. You're laying down, you're in a bed, and it's going to be a progressive loss of the physical, sensory, and mental functions as the nervous activity closes down from the periphery to deep within the nervous system. So you're dying a natural death. And you'll experience the following 8 stages as the components of your mind and body gradually absorb. Try to imagine these experiences as vividly as possible. On the first 4 stages, the mind is still on the gross level. And the gross level includes our thoughts and sense perceptions, but they will gradually be diminishing over the 4 stages. So the first phase is the earth element degenerates and dissolves into the water element. So the solid aspects of the body, such as the bone, are no longer capable of serving as a foundation for consciousness. The solid aspects dissolve into the fluids of the body. So our body becomes thin and weak. We lose our strength, feel drained of energy. Our arms and legs might feel like they're falling or sinking under the earth. It becomes difficult to sit upright or to hold anything. Your vision becomes dark and blurry. You can no longer close your eyes. Your natural glow fades, and the inner vision of a mirage appears, like a silver blue mirage. That's the inner vision. There's always these more external or bodily signs, and then the inner one. So that's the first phase. The second phase is that the water element degenerates and dissolves into fire. So as this absorbs, your mouth and nose dry and pucker. You can no longer remember the difference between pain, pleasure, or neutral feelings. You can no longer feel the difference between pain, pleasure, and neutrality. You can no longer hear external sounds, and you no longer hear internal sounds like the buzzing or ringing in your ears that you just normally hear throughout the day. All of those sounds are gone. And the internal sign is wisps of smoke, haze or swirling wisps of smoke. So mirage is gone, smoke is present, and fireflies are coming. So now the third stage, the fire element, absorbs. So the fire element degenerates and dissolves into the wind element, the currents of air or energy that direct various bodily functions. So the warmth in your body withdraws, usually from the hands and feet to the heart. You can no longer remember the names of the people in your life. You can no longer remember your relationships to the people in your life. Your breathing changes. Your inhalation is short, and your exhalations become longer and longer. And in your mind, you now see the vision of fireflies or sparks. So the smoke is gone, fireflies are here, and light is coming. So the fourth stage is the air element absorbs and dissolves into consciousness. So you can no longer move your body. You can no longer have conceptual thoughts. Things are becoming blurry as your last feeling of contact with the environment is slipping away. Your tongue has become thick and dark. You can no longer taste. You can no longer feel your body. All breathing has stopped. And all thoughts now cease. And the inner vision is of the last flickering of a candle flame about to go out. So gross consciousness has now ceased, and over the next 4 stages of the death process, the mind becomes more and more subtle. So at the 5th stage, you have a vision of very clear, empty sky, like the sky in autumn, full of the brightness of a full moon. The next inner vision, the 6th stage, is like a clear, empty sky filled with the rays of a red copper sunset. The 7th stage This is the vision of total darkness, dark, empty space. It ends in a momentary, complete loss of consciousness, like fainting. And then the final stage is the clear light vision. The mind is now at its most subtle level, that of the clear light of death. The appearance is like that of the autumn sky at dawn, completely pure and empty, filled with clear, colorless light. Keep your mind focused on this experience for as long as you can without letting the mind be distracted by anything else. If it becomes distracted, bring it back to the clear light experience, remembering that this is the most pure, subtle level of your mind. This mind of clear light has existed continuously since beginningless cyclic existence. Since it is not temporary, it's called fundamental mind. This is all empty, fundamental, innate mind of clear light is the innermost mind. In the final phase of dying, when all coarse consciousness dissolves into the all empty, which is the clear light or fundamental mind, the myriad objects of the world, as well as concepts such as sameness and difference, have been pacified in this subtlest mind. All appearances of environments and beings have withdrawn of their own accord. If you are able to transform the clear light of death into a fully qualified spiritual consciousness, the mind recognizes its own face, its own nature. When the clear light of death ceases, the consciousness typically passes back through the stages of dissolution in reverse order, the black vision, the red vision, and so forth. As soon as this process begins, the person is in the intermediate or bardo state, with a subtle body that travels in the bardo state until its next rebirth. Okay. And take a deep breath and come back to this life. So how did that seem? Is that the first time most of you have heard those states? Yeah? Yeah. So these are from, so the question was, how does this person know these states, right? I'm going to get the better answer for you from Geshe-la. I'll ask him. But these aren't, this isn't something somebody just made up. These are from like ancient texts in Buddhism. So I don't know if like people, it went through these states and then came back and wrote about them. The highest practitioners are able to kind of access those states of mind while they're alive. So those, somebody who has really the highest practitioner will be able to even see that at, like when you're falling asleep, see some of those dissolution, not the whole thing, but they will be able to see how the mind goes through some of those same stages as we're falling asleep. As somebody's meditating, a deep meditative practitioner would be able to see some of those same things when we're meditating. So Geshe was just telling me the other day how, he had slept through a whole bunch of noise outside, and Geshe Sampo was so surprised that he slept through it. And he goes, that's because he was in, when we're sleeping, there's a certain stage that we're sleeping, we won't even hear any of those things. We're in complete paralysis, right? Other states, when we're in dream states, we incorporate those into our dreams. So we can use falling asleep to practice some of this, even if it's just to like we just did, walk ourselves through these states so that they're not going to be frightening to us when we are going through them for real. But I'll try to get a better answer for you about how do people actually know these states.
Because I observed a very close friend in hospice.
Mm-hmm.
Took him about 7 weeks to die.
Mm-hmm.
So I could observe the phases they were going to. And the hospice organization sort of tells you some of the things that you could expect to happen.
Right.
And that's not quite like what they said.
Yeah, but because some of these are so internal. And when my mother was dying, I thought that I was observing certain, especially when her breath changed to what they were describing here. I thought, okay, now because she took about 4 days in active stages of dying. And I thought, okay, now I think she's getting really close because her breathing had changed so much. And also I saw what hospice called restless legs and restlessness, like the person is totally unconscious, but they keep trying to get up. That's that first stage where you feel like your arms and legs are falling. Even when Geshe lived with me and my dog was dying, and he was watching the different stages. You'll see how she keeps trying to do this. That's that first stage of feeling like your arms and legs are falling. And so he could tell, he said, okay, now she's going to die, you should leave, because he didn't want me to be upset around her and upset her. So in this book, they talk also about, when the mind is getting really close to dying now, it's very important not to disturb it in any way, because even just a loud noise or noise that for us isn't loud could disturb that mind. And at that moment when we're dying, we don't want to have a disturbed or angry or confused mind like that, because then if we're studying Buddhism and we know that one moment leads to the next moment, this is a really huge, important moment. So we don't want anything to disturb that mind. So that's why Geshe, when my dog was dying, said, okay, now you go. Because at that moment he knew she was about to die, and she was. She was just like 10 minutes away from it. And I had asked him once, I said, but some of those stages seem like they're happening for years. My body becomes thin and weak. Well, we see that way before that person actually dies. They're not just becoming thin or weak in one day. And he said, well, that's true. Some of it can be very kind of slow motion. Some of it's just aging. But some of the other ones are not so gradual. And he said, even if you die suddenly, all those things will happen like this, And I don't know, maybe some of them happen in a little bit different order. But they're in these categories because these different elements are dissolving. And those elements are very, very similar to Asian medicine. Have you ever talked to like an acupuncturist? They're talking about the same kind of elements and the balance of those elements. But I'll still try to find out where this exactly comes from, this text. Yeah.
I have one, Steve. So you were mentioning your dog dying, and I've had a dog die at home as well. And I was playing the Lama Zopa Rinpoche chants. There's a disc that you can, actually purchase. And I had that playing all the way through his death. Mm-hmm. So now in hindsight, would it have been better to turn that off?
Oh, I don't think so. No, because
Okay.
Geshe did the same for my dog and for my mom. So yeah, at one point you're no longer hearing external sounds,
Okay,
right?
right.
But that's a ways into it. I mean, it's not the very first stage. You're still hearing external sounds. And some of these stages could be shorter than the other ones or longer. So there's no one size fits all. And also, I think, I don't know, I mean, this is just me talking, but so we're not hearing anything more with the ear organ, but I don't know if that, what are we picking up? So when my mom was dying, I thought I was going to be in the room the entire time, but of course it took a long time. And Geshe-la kept telling me, you don't have to be in the room, because she's going to be sensing what, she's no longer necessarily just in that little body anymore. So, I was walking all around the neighborhood, saying different prayers and feeling that she was benefiting from that. If actually I felt when I was in the room, it was more disturbing to her, just my energy. Just also I was just, wiping her mouth and things like that, and I just felt like this is actually not as helpful as I thought it would be. So I kept walking. Yeah. Any other thoughts or questions? Is it weird to meditate on this, or okay? Because remember what I was saying last week, all of it's meant to be empowering. And actually when I do this meditation right, I feel just kind of really calm and peaceful. I used to do a different version of it where I remember, because it was something Geshe-la had led us through once where, I just was dissolving things on my own. Like, what if I no longer had this name? I had no name. Okay. What if I had no history? I couldn't remember my history. And then I would kind of dissolve my body, and then I would dissolve the place I was sitting, and then the earth. I could still feel something, and so then I would just try to meditate on whatever that was left, just the feeling, just the nature of mind. And then I learned this meditation, and this gives it much more structure, but it's still that calmness. And very, if you meditate at all on emptiness, that's what this is joining, the clear light nature of the mind. In the poem, they call it the child light and the mother light are uniting. At that moment, Geshe-la is saying that your understanding of emptiness, if you join whatever understanding of emptiness you have in your meditation at that moment when you get to that clear light mind, that's the whole point. And then to try to and that's why, you hear these stories of Tibetan Buddhists who die, who are really strong practitioners. They die and they stay in this meditative state for days, right? Their body isn't really decaying right away. They're kind of glowing. And the Tibetans don't want to move them because they feel that their consciousness is resting in that clear light state for as long as possible. So they're resting in that state, and then after 3 days, they will probably no longer be in that state. But the longer you can rest in that state, then this is going to have a huge impact on where you take your next rebirth. So that's the whole point. That's the whole point. For me, it's very empowering. And it gave me, I remember at the beginning, Geshe-la thought that I was saying that I was afraid of dying. And I was like, no, I'm not afraid of dying. I'm afraid of dying with a really disturbed mind. I'm afraid of being killed and not having that chance, So that's what drew me to Buddhism right off the bat, was all of the practices on dying and helping your mind stay as calm as possible at the moment of death. And so we have tons of opportunities all around us to practice and understand impermanence. That was the homework, wasn't it? Yeah, it slipped my mind, but it was finding different ways and opportunities to look at impermanence. So the more we can become familiar with that, it will also help us at the moment of death. And I had this little tape, but Brian isn't here, so we're going to play it next week. Kind of a fun way of thinking about impermanence, because we can get kind of gloomy with certain things of impermanence, as I was describing last week. It can just be overwhelming when we're just focusing on this one end of impermanence. But it's also because things are impermanent that something arises, anything positive that we want. So we did that meditation on different environments changing, and I can't remember who it was who was saying they were getting really sad about some area that might be overdeveloped, right? Remember that? But it could also be, it doesn't have to always just go in that direction. Because it's impermanent, it can go in a more positive direction. But anything that comes together has a span. So we are, all the aggregates of discovering Buddhism for tonight are in this room, right? We are all the aggregates of this thing that we can now label the Discovering Buddhism class. It's just like our bodies. We have all these aggregates that have come together and formed this being of steep, whoever you are, and then all those things will dissolve. And then something else will take shape, just like inhalation and exhalation. So right now, we have all come together in this building, on this night, at this time, with this topic, and we can label this the Discovering Buddhism class on Monday, December 2nd. And because it's come together in that form, it will also definitely disintegrate. So everybody's going to go off to their own little homes and go to sleep and get up and do the next day, and then we'll come, some other form of us will come together next Monday and be able to carry that label. To me, that's a perfect example of impermanence of, and it's replicated everywhere. We can just see it everywhere around us, and certainly then ultimately in our own lives. I'm tired of talking, so I'm just going to pass the mic around and let somebody else talk. We can do another couple of meditations, but I'd like to hear any kind of thoughts for you about, because remember last time I asked you, what are some questions you want to make sure are answered before you leave? Some of the people who asked those questions are no longer here tonight, so, but I did write them down. One thing, just because this person did ask it, so maybe she's watching, she had asked about kind of like, I'm probably going to badly paraphrase this, but she sometimes felt connected to people who had died and felt like she was still kind of in touch with them. Does remember this question? And she would get like messages from them or something like that. And is that really possible if beings take rebirth right away? Did I do a good job of? Is there anything I missed out on that question? Do you remember that question? So I talked to Geshe about that, and I said, I have no idea the answer to that question. And he said, well, definitely, consciousness takes rebirth somewhere within 49 days. But he said, this was kind of news to me, and then I just read about it as I was preparing for class. There are, according to Buddhist cosmology, there are human lives on many, many other planets in the solar system. So he said some of those planets, those beings have clairvoyance, have clear seeing. And maybe that's what she's feeling. It's one of her close beings, relatives, took rebirth there, and so she is feeling something from them. So I just thought, well, that was an interesting answer. Thought I'd share it in case it helps anybody. He goes, yeah, and I hadn't heard that before, all these different planets. He was talking about human rebirths on all these different planets. Some of those beings have clairvoyance. He goes, but then there's also celestial realms that she could be feeling. Somebody also asked about what Buddhist thoughts are on suicide. I don't know if that person is here. Okay. Well, I didn't ask Geshe about this one because I think I know the answer. It's just that when we talk about the downside of taking life, we're also including our own. Just like I said, when we're saying, may all beings be happy and have the causes of happiness, we should be including ourselves. So it's certainly not considered anything virtuous. But there's also just not a lot of there's always the long view in mind, right? So there's not a lot, I rarely hear, judgment, but it's certainly something to be avoided at all costs. It's still considered taking life. Even when you take your own, it's still considered taking life. And I know what Lama Zopa Rinpoche and others have said is that sometimes we think something is kind because we can't actually see the next step, right? So we think it's the person or the animal or whatever is going to be at peace now because we've ended their suffering. And from their point of view, what Lama Zopa would say is, we have no idea where their consciousness is going next. So we think that we've done this being a great service by putting them out of their misery. But here the misery might be a whole lot easier to manage with help and kindness and medication or whatever than not. So it's just that we don't have the wisdom to know exactly what we're doing. Our intentions may be good, but we don't have the wisdom to know if something's out of its suffering or not. So doing as many things as we possibly can to contribute to positive imprints on a mind is better. Is better. Okay. Any other questions that I need to add to the list that I can ask Geshe-la about? Or any other things you want to make sure we cover next week? No? This is good? So yeah, we're going to do a little bit more in-depth death dissolution next week. And see what you think about. I mean, I can give you kind of a shorter version of it so that you can do it on your own. In fact, I'll do it right now so you can see how fast I do it. So that you can memorize it and pretty much do this yourself. I do it, again, a couple of times a week just to keep it fresh in my mind. It's not that difficult to memorize. It's not like a long prayer or something. So let's do that, and then we can end early. All right, so I'll see if hopefully I got it correct. So just, again, refresh your posture. And I just have kind of like main tabs. I don't go through as much as I just read to you. My body becomes thin and weak. Or your body becomes thin and weak. Vision becomes dark and blurry. My arms and legs feel like they're falling. I can no longer blink my eyes. My natural glow is gone, and mirage appears. Mirage is here, and fireflies are coming. I can no longer feel the difference between pain, pleasure, and neutrality. I can no longer feel the difference between pain, pleasure, and neutrality. My mouth and nose dry and pucker. I can no longer hear external sounds. I can no longer hear internal sounds. And fireflies appear. Mirage is gone. Sparks or fireflies are here, and smoke is coming. I can no longer remember the people around me, the people in my life. I can no longer remember their names. I can no longer remember my relationships to the people around me. Warmth withdraws. My breathing becomes labored. Short inhalations, long exhalations. I can no longer hear external sounds. I can no longer hear internal sounds. This is the ones that fireflies appear. Smoke is gone. Fireflies appear. And light is coming. I can no longer move my body. I can no longer have conceptual thoughts of why, when, where. I can no longer breathe in. I can no longer feel my body. I can no longer have any thoughts. single candlelight appears. Then a vision of white light sky, then red, then dark, momentary fainting, loss of consciousness, and then the clear light, perfect, pure, clear light arises. The most subtle mind. And just as we started tonight by directing our intention to the highest possible goal, we end by dedicating any positive seeds that we created by getting ourselves here on a Monday night, by thinking about this topic, by practicing this topic. We dedicate these positive seeds to ripen in the most positive way possible to benefit our mind and all those around us. That all that we are creating in our life is through our three gates of body, speech, and mind. Mind being such a powerful one, so we're now using our mind to dedicate any positivity that we created tonight. And thank you very much for coming. Good night. Thank you. Sure.